3 times the value of the deposit. So the tenant wises up that the deposit hasn't been registered, firstly. That's not even the main thing. You can register the deposit, fine, so you tick the box, happy, you go on with your normal business, but you haven't given the tenant the prescribed information. That's as bad as not registering the deposit. So let's just look at the steps then quickly. If we just go back, so first step, obviously given the AST, second step you have to register the deposit. Then you've got a choice of obviously using, these are the 3 main schemes we're looking at, so it's the TDS, My Deposits and the DPS. The first 2 are what we call insurance-based schemes, where in the first 2 cases the landlord holds the deposit, so you retain the deposit, but you register the deposit with those 2 schemes. Make sense? Yeah? What we're saying. So the third one is a custodial scheme, the DPS, where the deposit has to be handed over to the company or to the government scheme. Okay, so you literally have to transfer the deposit over to them, and then you get a tenant ID and landlord ID. A bit more difficult to get those funds back. If the tenant absconds, damage to the property, there must be a tenant ID and there must be a landlord ID. So we found in the past that if the landlord wants the deposit, it's quite a cumbersome process to get that back. Okay, because you have to have the ID of the tenant. If the tenant is absconded, you then have to write a letter to the DPS to get that back. So it's not that easy. The first 2, a bit more straightforward. You retain the deposit. You can use a letting agent such as ourselves. This is what Nicholas is doing now. So use us. We've got a segregated client account with client money protection, so we can register the deposits on your behalf. Obviously we retain it, and if there's an inventory, hopefully, we can look at that and then work it out at the end. So the first 2, basically, as we say, you keep the deposit, you've got your own login details, and it's easier to just get that money out at the end. Okay? So just very quickly then, the TDS, as we said, is a government insurance scheme where the landlord holds the deposit. Okay, that's the first one. The second one, My Deposit's also the same. The landlord holds the deposit, very straightforward. And the DPS is a custodial scheme. Yep, question?
I think the DPS has changed. You can have an insurance scheme with the DPS, because I've got one.
Yeah. Okay, so I think, what we have at the moment is we've got a DPS account and we've got a My Deposits account. We tend to still prefer the My Deposits schemes, quite straightforward. The DPS still has a lot of, I wouldn't say politics, but it's just more difficult to get the money out from them. I suppose the change occurred quite recently as well, so I suppose we just have to look back at that as well. Okay, so what's the sequence is important here. So you get the AST done, you register the deposit, then you can go ahead with the next step, which is to give the tenant the prescribed information. It doesn't matter which of the 3 you use. Okay, whether you use the DPS, the TDS, or the My Deposit scheme, the tenant must get the prescribed information. And like we said, it's important that they get this within 30 days. Now, what if you give it to the tenant after about 3 months? If the tenant wises up again, then they can go back and say, well, I haven't received the prescribed information. We've got a case at the moment whereby a tenant has actually signed a My Deposit certificate, and she's put a defence claim into the court to say that I believe my deposit is registered somewhere with a scheme. So this is, I actually got the defence claim through from the landlord, and it says that she believes that there is some deposit registered, but she signed it herself, a My Deposit certificate. So we've got her signature, my signature on the certificate to say that it is registered with the My Deposits. So I don't know what happened if she had brain damage in the meantime, but the bottom line is the certificate is there, and we've got a court hearing on the 22nd of May, and I've got to go present the certificate to the judge to say, here's the certificate. How can the tenant say that she does not know where the certificate was registered? So the paperwork's really important to get that right. Yeah. So, and it has to be done within the 30-day period. Yeah. So you have to give that prescribed information. Now, what is prescribed information? Thank goodness the My Deposits have taken it down from 6 pages down to 2 pages. Easier to print, but you can email it as well. Okay. Now, the tenant can come back and say, you've given me some kind of idea of where my deposit is held, but I didn't get the prescribed information. So the My Deposits do not give you any indication on the prescribed information where the tenant can sign. So what we're doing nowadays, we give them the certificate, and at the bottom we say prescribed information received with the certificate, and we sign it. Otherwise they can come back later on and say, oh, I didn't get the prescribed information. What evidence is there we've given it to them within that 30-day period. Yeah, so it can be emailed as well, and that email in their inbox would be a proof as well. Third one, and this is where we are at the moment. Issue a Section 21 if you do want to get rid of the tenant, but you cannot issue a Section 21 unless these things have been done. So this is what we find now, that landlords come to us and say, I'd like to get rid of my tenant. So the first thing we say is, can we see the AST, and can we see the deposit registration certificate? Oops, I've got the AST, but deposit registration certificate? Should